Sure. If there was ever a pattern, an archetype that affects many, many businesses and causes ton of distortion, it is this week's pattern. This week, we're looking at capacity runway pressure, when hiring gets ahead of stability. So first we want to identify the lens that we're taking a look at this pattern through. And scaling amplifies what's broken, and diagnosis precedes deployment. So we're looking at the pattern to be able to diagnose its location, and we'll get into this in a little bit later. Okay. Okay. So the first thing we want to understand is that revenue for all businesses, revenue flows through 4 structural domains: demand, conversion, capacity, and cash. Every business operates inside this flow. So, but the flow of revenue is not enough alone, because revenue identifies how the business grows, but the constraint explains where the growth breaks. Without visibility into the constraint, until that's identified and located, everything we do is a guess. So this is a streamline and scale framework, and this represents the way that we manage the system of revenue. We manage the activities in revenue. So here is where a founder can see where revenue flows, where constraint lives, and most importantly, where it's dangerous to scale. Okay. The 4 primary constraint domains are aligned with the revenue system in the sense of where to go and look for the constraints within the system. So demand domain constraints are identified and managed in Spotlight. Conversion domain constraints are identified and worked through in the offer quadrant. Capacity constraints in Activate, and cash constraints in Retain. So constraint exists in only one of these domains. That one domain is called the primary domain. So, and then the way that we diagnose the constraint is, first we look at the pattern, then we identify, based on the pattern, the constraint domain where the work is located. We locate that work in the revenue system, and then we look at the signals and metrics to confirm our diagnosis of that constraint. Now, and then, and we use the revenue system to be able to do that here. So this week, we are looking at the archetype of capacity runway pressure, and this is in the capacity domain, and it is located in the Activate quadrant of the revenue system. So the founder symptom, what you may hear or perhaps may say is, we hire to support growth, but now the payroll is ahead of revenue. Okay. In the field, what this looks like is the team grew, but the pressure stayed. The payroll feels heavy, busy and quiet cycles, feast or famine. Margin feels thinner, and responsibilities increase. The system does not feel stronger, it feels heavier. We have some signals also that we see with this pattern. We're hiring before stability. Utilization is dropping. Payroll is ahead of revenue growth. And idle capacity appears. Pressure comes in bursts. Now, what is the mechanism for how this happens? The work arrives in bursts, okay? And the bursts create pressure. The pressure moves us to want to hire because we think, we've got a lot of work. We got to get somebody in here to take care of it so we can make more money. The capacity increase when you hire, the capacity increases permanently, or you have to let some people go, right? We don't want to be in that position. And the bursts remain, right? So you thought that the hiring helped, but the bursts remain. The idle time expands because now you have greater capacity. The system isn't overloaded, it's uneven. So let's take a look at a scenario like we do every week here on Profit Visibility Lab. Revenue is 150K. The deal size is 15. The close rate is 30%. You need 10 deals, and the team size is 5 to 8. In terms of the metrics, we'll look at the utilization before and after. So the utilization before was matching capacity, was matching revenue. And the utilization was at 85 to 100%. So the system is nearly full. After the hire, the capacity is at 240K with salaries, but the revenue is still at 150. So you actually experience a drop in utilization to 62.5%. And the payroll goes from 75 to 120. And the margin is also affected. Margin goes down. So you didn't lose revenue, but you did lose utilization. Okay. So the misdiagnosis pathway is how we get there, because we are always diagnosing. What we're looking at with these patterns is how to not misdiagnose. So the misdiagnosis pathway is the founder sees busy weeks, backlog, and a stretched team, right? And then concludes, well, we need more people to do the work. It is reinforced because it feels good to hire someone in the moment. It feels like relief, and team growth feels like progress, right? Headcount is the easiest growth metric to fake, because headcount doesn't always mean that the revenue is growing. So we talk about response versus origin. In other words, what quadrant did you respond in, and where was the actual origin of the constraint? So the response is to hire, expand the team, and increase capacity. Okay. But the actual origin of the issue is uneven flow, pressure spikes, and premature expansion. Okay. You were deploying over here because you thought you needed to expand the team, but the constraint lives over in capacity with things that we needed to do before hiring so that we could align with revenue. Hired because the work wasn't flowing, but there was an uneven flow. So let's look at the consequences of the misdiagnosis. The margin is compressed. There's lower flexibility, shorter runway. The pressure's increasing, and the demand urgency is rising. At the baseline in a healthy system, we would see utilization at 80 to 85%. Payroll aligned to load. Margin absorbing the variance. okay? And the system feels stable. It's healthy. But there's two paths. So the first path is we scale the distortion. The second path is we fix the constraint first. So we're going to look at path A if we decide to scale the distortion by hiring, there's pressure, we hire, the utilization drops, the costs increase, and the margin tightens. Pressure keeps repeating. If we fix the constraint first, we pause the hiring, measure utilization, smooth the workflow, improve the throughput, and we augment resources with AI or contractors in the meantime until we can stabilize. Then we hire. So hiring is a last resort versus the next step. We hire on demand, not pressure. So here's some comparative outcomes. With the premature hiring, so we had 150K in revenue, 120K in payroll, and we had margin, right? When the revenue dips, we have negative margin, right? Of course. But when we fix the constraint first by smoothing out the workflow, then with 160K in revenue, we can maintain an 85K payroll and then increase our margin by 75K because we can do more with less because we evened it out. Now, what are the downstream impacts? Because we know that the primary domain is that the constraint can only live in one domain at a time. So that doesn't mean, however, that there aren't downstream impacts. So in demand, there's a pressure to generate more revenue. We need more revenue to pay for, to keep people busy and pay the payroll. In the conversion, we need to close more. It's forced closes. Like, okay, let's go ahead and close this business so we can get these people busy. And in capacity, you still wind up with underutilized capacity. But still, the primary domain is in capacity. Now, what do we do to resolve this? We measure utilization, confirm the load persistence, smooth intake, improve the process, and apply AI where ROI is not clear. Now, and use that elastic capacity. Easier said than done. And that's why we hire, because hiring is the quick fix. The activity to really regulate the workflow through the business, it takes a little bit more time to be able to do that. But the long-term benefits outweigh the short-term time that it takes to do the diagnosis before you deploy. Again, we're hiring last. You identify the process, refine it so that you even out the workflow, maybe augment your capacity with all the different tools that are available, and then hire, okay? Now, at this point, if this is resonating with you, there's a fork. What are we going to do? You can guess and hire, push harder, and expand your cost structure. The other thing you could do, though, is you could confirm by isolating the domain, identify the pattern, isolate the domain, prove the mechanism, see what's happening within the business, and then deploy, okay? Now, people are commitment. It's not just about the resources in terms of payroll. You're making a commitment to someone that you're going to provide a sustenance for them and their family. So, of course, you don't want to take it lightly. With pattern identification, you can be able to augment and do different things to help support your decision so that it's not a risk for you or your team. Scaling amplifies what's broken. Diagnose before you deploy. So if this situation resonated with you, then the place to begin is with the snapshot.